Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you're tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
Good evening, everybody. Radio Free Mormon manning the news desk here at, what is the show? It's the Mormon Newscast. It's episode number 29.
I think we finally landed on that name after several misfires. Yes, we are the Mormon Newscast.
Yes, and I'm in charge tonight, so I think I should be there. Thank you, Rebecca. Anyway, I move people around during the course of the show. Well, there's been no news going on this week, but we've come up with a few stories. We've come up with a few stories that are Mormon related, at least. And I'm happy to be joined by co-hosts Rebecca Biblioteca and Bill Reel. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. We have a number of great stories for you this evening. And we have those stories here in a list. First, our top stories. Number one, Deznats Duplicitous motives, ? Next story, what one LDS leader learned from Prop 8. I think Bill Reel will be taking that story. Rebecca Biblioteca will be updating us on the Aaron Sherinian story. Has he been spotted? Then the McKinney, Texas Temple updates. I think we all know that will be Rebecca. And then teddy bear parachutes. That's going to be Rebecca too. Rebecca is all over this newscast tonight. But I'm taking the lead story. So let's go ahead and start with the lead story, Deznats Duplicitous motives. This is from an article in the Salt Lake Tribune, July 13th. 2024 is by Tamara Kimsley. There's a picture of her, by the way. She's a real up-and-comer over there. She's going to take over, I think, the Peggy Fletcher Stack position, perhaps. And the title of this is Study, or a study, suggests a darker side to Deznat movement that says its only aim is to support LDS church leaders. Yes, I'm not sure that's its only aim, if you know what I mean. 6 years ago, the hashtag Deznat appeared on X, then known as Twitter, and a movement was born. I long for the day when we'll be able to say X and not always have to keep saying it was once Twitter. But a movement was born 6 years ago. That's 2018. Today's date is July 15th, 2024. The largely anonymous accounts, those Deznat accounts, largely anonymous, that have since embraced the term, which is short for Deseret Nation or Deseret Nationalism, depending on whom you ask, are united in the belief that allegiance to leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, past and present, ought to be total. In other words, they're good Mormons. But as a recent study of the movement found, it's not quite as simple as that. And now that Bill Reel has left the building, I'm somewhat concerned because I don't have the ability to advance these slides. Oh, he's still here. Good. I've never been quite so happy to see you, Bill.
Good.
Otherwise, I was just going to read that slide over and over for an hour. So this is also from the story, and I separated it and blew it up for a reason. The Utah-based church, the story says, has emphasized that the self-anointed defenders of the faith, i.e. Deznat, are not affiliated with or endorsed by the global religion, which means they're saying the Mormon Church has emphasized that Deznat is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Mormon Church. That's what that means. And the next slide is my question. Where have they emphasized this? I'm not exactly sure. So I went onto the church website and I put in a search function of Deznat, D-E-Z-N-A-T. I think that's how you spell it, isn't it, Bill?
D-E-Z-N-A-T. Yes, that's correct.
Yes. It's not quite D's nuts, but it's similar.
It's close.
If you did D's nuts, I'd probably get more responses. But anyway, Deznat, if I put that in, and I did that just this morning, so this is really up-to-date research, we get 3 results, none of which have anything to do with Deznat. Ironically, the first result is the Danites that Deznat kind of resembles. But if you click on that, there's nothing about this church article about the Danites, which is basically to talk about, yeah, it existed, but Joseph Smith had nothing to do with it, right? The typical thing you'd read about it on the church website. And that's from 1838. Oh, if you can go back, Bill.
Yep.
Thank you. And then the second one, the second story, church releases statement condemning white supremacists. Now, that might sound like it might be it, but you'll notice that's August 15th, 2017. That was right after the incident in Charlottesville. Keep in mind that's 2017. We're going to look at that statement here in a second. And then the third is church response to John Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven. Okay. I don't think there's any Deznat in that. I mean, that came out in 2003. So those are the only three things that come up when I search all content. And by the way, I had started looking at, if you look down a few, I had started looking at news and events because I wanted to know if the church had put out some kind of press release about how they are emphasizing that Deznat's not affiliated with the LDS Church. And there was nothing there. So I went up to all content to make sure I'm seeing everything that could possibly be seen on the church website, and I don't see anything. The closest I get is that second one, church releases statement condemning white supremacists. And if we go to the next one, this is that statement, okay? So update Tuesday, August 15th, 2017, right? And then the church has released the following statement, and I put in the parentheses after Charlottesville to contextualize it historically. And Rebecca, actually, you're going to be doing everything else in this show. Bill, could you read this?
Yeah. So the text of the message here is, it has been called to our attention that there are some among the various pro-white and white supremacy communities who assert that the church is neutral toward or in support of their views. Nothing could be further from the truth. In the New Testament, Jesus said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." The Book of Mormon teaches that all are alike unto God. And it finishes by saying white supremacist attitudes are morally wrong and sinful, and we condemn them. Church members who promote or pursue a white culture or white supremacy agenda are not in harmony with the teachings of the church. So what they're essentially also saying is that past leaders wouldn't be in harmony with the teachings of the church.
And they condemn them.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have present church leaders condemning past church leaders, at least sub silentio. But there's nothing about Deznat in here. And by that, I mean, Deznat is not mentioned. Deseret Nation is not mentioned. Deseret Nationalism is not mentioned. But they are talking about white supremacy. And the problem is that the story at the Salt Lake Tribune that we're going off of says the church has emphasized that the church has nothing to do with these guys. We don't support them. They're not affiliated with us, which led me to wonder, where have they done this? And this is what I've been trying to do, is find out where. This is not it, okay? This actually comes from the story now. When did Deznat form, and how representative is it of U.S. Mormonism more broadly? The answer, August 2018, is when the hashtag was first used on Twitter. They are arguably more conservative than even your average Latter-day Saint. This is all from the story. It's in question and answer format, where Tamara, the author of the story, is talking with the authors of this study about Deznat. So it's a sort of a question and answer thing. But you notice August 2018, that's a year after this statement was issued by the church about white supremacy. So obviously, at least to me, it didn't have anything to do with distancing itself from Deznat specifically. Because not only does it not mention Deznat in the statement, Deznat had not even been created yet. And it wouldn't be for another year. So if I can just ask people, we've got a great audience, they're super smart, and they're good at searching for things. And maybe I just didn't find it, because I'm wondering, why is it that this Salt Lake Tribune story is saying, and it'll say later, that the church has issued statements like this on 2 separate occasions. And I'm just wondering why it's so hard to find them. I mean, I know it wasn't said in general conference, so it's not that important to them to really get the message out to the members. But I don't find it anywhere on the website. So if we can go on with this, that's the first question I have, because then I thought, well, Deznat, maybe the church was using the full name, like Deseret Nation. And you'll notice that I go to all content. This is once again this morning. The search returns 0 results for Deseret Nation. And then I thought, well, how about Deseret Nationalism? So I searched for that. 0 results. No mention of it on the church website. So I'm having trouble finding anything anywhere on the church website where they are distancing themselves from Deznat or saying they're not affiliated with the church. That's the point of these different slides and the point of this research.
And if they're talking, RFM, about if they're talking about it being like a general news story out in a newspaper and they just make a comment in it, then there'd be no real way for any of us to track it later on to see what their point of view is about Deznat.
Right. The main thing is this, is that apparently the church's statements distancing itself from Deznat are harder to find than the gospel topic essays. Because at least if I search a key term, the essays will come up. I can find them by searching the church website. I can't find anything about Deznat or Deseret Nationalism or Deseret Nation on the church website. So unless I'm doing it wrong, or my computer's not working, or their website isn't working, or anything else that might explain this strange series of events, it doesn't look like there's anything on the church website where they're saying that they're distancing themselves from Deznat. And I find that concerning, because I think the church really does need to come out strongly and publicly and in general conference and distance themselves from Deznat and condemn Deznat and Deseret Nationalism and make it really clear to all the members, instead of, I don't know, we got a story that says they've done it, and later on the story will say they've done it twice. I just don't know where it is. Okay, we beat that horse to death. Going on with the story. According to the authors of the new study, Spencer Greenhalgh, an associate professor of communication at the University of Kentucky, and Amy Chapman, operations director at the New Jersey Psychological Association, Deznat provides an opportunity to consider overlaps between Mormonism, the far right, and aggressive anti-feminism. And here I'm seeing in my mind a Venn diagram. The Salt Lake Tribune spoke with Greenhalgh about, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but spoke with Greenhalgh about the duo's research and why Latter-day Saints, many of whom have never used X and probably never will, should care about Deznat. So here's a question and then the answer from the authors of the study. What is Deznat? Deznat is an online movement that's particularly prominent on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, but has been active in other online spaces as well. While prominent accounts and those who are kind of loosely the leaders of the movement have claimed that it's about supporting the leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of course, that's what they're going to say about themselves, right? Critics have pointed out that there are a number of right-wing references that get brought up over and over again. And there we got a little picture down there of a former Deznat, I think. I think that was the guy we had on our show after he quit Deznat, wasn't it, Bill?
I don't know if that's the same guy, but he did talk about that guy with the knife. I don't know if he was the guy with the knife, but with a mask on, one would never know.
And by the way, if it wasn't you, and I apologize, okay, because I can't tell because bandana. So what issues are Deznat most concerned about? There's a strong insistence on the traditional hierarchy and the traditional ecclesiastical structure of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the need for everyday members of the church to fall in line rather than question, discuss, or even criticize the pronouncements that come from higher ups. I'm sorry, that owl just freaked me out.
Sorry.
What was that about? Where did that
owl
come from?
There's an owl in the machine, not a ghost, but an owl.
It was just the background of the computer.
And an owl shows up.
At least it was only an owl. Let's be glad for that.
Who are you talking about?
I feel like I'm playing You Bet Your Life. There's an old reference.
Man, it's just not going to stop. Sorry, I'm closing out other things that might be interfering with why our outro and why the other version of the slideshow isn't loading. So it keeps showing my background. Anyway, continue.
Sure. Say the secret word and a bird will fly out of your pants. Okay. But in 2019, at least 2019, the emphasis was on getting in line behind church leaders. Often in practice, what that ended up meaning was taking traditional conservative approaches on things like gender and sexuality and making sure that Brigham Young University students were falling in line with the honor code. And by the way, it's not in the story, but also making sure that BYU professors are falling in line with the honor code too. That's been a big focus of Deznat. Why should the average church member care about Deznat? The authors of the study answer this way. Deznat raises questions about what appropriate boundaries within Mormonism are. Anti-feminist discourses that are present in Deznat have some overlap with church teachings. Yeah, you think? Where is the line between what is preached at General Conference and aggressive behavior towards women online? Where is the line between those things? Can you form a boundary between those? Can you form a boundary between sustaining Ezra Taft Benson as a former president of the church and accepting that earlier in his life he wanted him to run, he wanted himself? This is, by the way, a transcript, I think, of just an oral interview, which is why it seems, you know, a little interesting the way it's said. It's more colloquial. It's more like it's spoken than written, because it was spoken, I think. So can you form a boundary between sustaining Ezra Taft Benson as a former president of the church and accepting that earlier in his life, Ezra Taft Benson wanted to run for president with famous segregationist George Wallace? And then we've got a little, I think that's a symbol for Deznat right there. And there they are. Not exactly together, but same time period, I think. There's Ezra Taft Benson on the left and George Wallace on the right, which is not the best picture you could ever have of George Wallace, I guess, but there's only so much you can work with. He's looking very demonic and possessed in that picture, I think. All right, so do you have a sense of the movement's gender breakdown? It's hard to tell because many of these accounts are anonymous. They're going to end up saying, yeah, it's mostly men. My gut reaction is that it's a predominantly male space, and you can see that in some of the data. Now, here's an interesting anecdote. For example, early in Russell M. Nelson's tenure as president of the church, he challenged the youth and women of the church to engage in a social media fast. Do we all remember that? So everyone was wondering, is this going to be applied to the men in the church? It wasn't. And there was a very interesting Deznat discourse at the time in which some were saying that President Nelson did not issue a social media challenge to the men because he wanted Deznat to keep doing what it's doing. Implicit in that is an understanding that Deznat is mostly masculine. Okay? And of course, they're going to think that they're going to interpret anything in terms of we're right and the leaders support us. Who are their influences? Historical Latter-day Saint figures who show up over and over are former President Ezra Taft Benson, former Apostle Boyd K. Packer, and former President Spencer Kimball and his book, The Miracle of Forgiveness. On a number of occasions, Brigham Young is held up as a kind of hero of this movement. One of the phrases that you will find sometimes in a Deznat tweet is, Brigham Young did nothing wrong. Implicit in that is his authoritarianism, his racist views, and views on gender, and violent views together with, blood atonement and things like that. So here's an example. Brigham Young did nothing wrong, where here's a picture of Brigham Young, and he's holding a pistol, and he's not exercising good gun safety. He's pointing it right at me. So that's from a Deznat person. Oh, and strangely, here over there at psychword Radio, they had a show which was called, interestingly enough, Elder Holland Did Nothing Wrong. This was after his Musket speech, where they wanted to come in his defense and came up with a title for their show, which sounds, coincidentally, I'm sure, like it was written by some Deznat guy. Okay, and then the next slide. Do they ever advocate for violence? The answer here, there's no denying that there is violent language, rhetoric. I think Deznat accounts would describe it as over-the-top humor. Yeah, that's what they say. It's over-the-top humor. They're trolling people to get a reaction, right? That's what they say about themselves. But this sort of strategic ambiguity is the hallmark of the far right, especially since 2015 and 2016. Do you have a sense for how big the movement is? Between February 1st, 2019 and December 12th, 2022. So that sounds like about 3 years, 19, 20, 21, 4 years almost. We collected 114,573 original posts containing hashtag Deznat, and almost 145,000 retweets of those posts. So original posts, and then there's retweets of the post. And the retweets look like they were more than the original tweets in number, for a total of almost 260,000 posts between the original and the retweets. Those came from 5,158 different accounts, some of which only used the hashtag once, and some of which used it a lot more frequently. There are 14 accounts that tweeted more than 1,000 times, and about 10 accounts that retweeted hashtag Deznat posts more than 1,000 times. Those two lists are overlapping. So obviously, there are certain people who are doing the lion's share of the original post and the retweeting. Oh, and here's one of them. We need to remember this one. So here's something from Braden. This is, by the way, this was the video that was made by somebody in Deznat, I believe, about John DeLynn. It was the Inglorious Bastards scene where they made John DeLynn, the Nazi who was captured by Brad Pitt. A dream come true, being captured by Brad Pitt. But not for this guy, because he's going to get his head bashed in with a baseball bat. So this guy Braden says, okay, this is an absolute work of art. I think you'll appreciate this. And he sends it to Kwaku, the Kwaku L at Stone 16, back when he had that podcast going. Short-lived, I think it was. And Braden says, just remember, it's to be understood symbolically, of course. Winky face. See, this is the way they handle their violent rhetoric. And they just say, oh, well, we're just kidding around, right? It's just symbolic. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then Midnight Mormons comes in. Hey, Braden, Cardinellis here. I am the director of This Is the Show. For those halcyon days of the tit show. That also is short-lived. I am the director of This Is the Show. Loved the video. Hoy me up. Is this like some kind of slang? I know Cardin's incredibly hip. He's a hip cat, and he's on to all the slang the youngsters are using more than I am. So, hoy me up. Rebecca, were you nodding there?
I think I was, because I think when my missionaries used to write me, they'd put stuff like that in their letters, and none of us could understand what the hell they were talking about. So
I'm guessing it means like call me up.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
That's how I would put it. Love the video. Call me up. I'd like to talk. And then over here, this is Kwaku retweeting it. So we talked in that article about the original and then the retweeting. And the retweets are more than the originals. And Kwaku says, now this is something. And then you see the other stuff below it that we had just seen. So that's the retweet. And that's how Kwaku got involved, retweeting Deznat stuff. Okay, so next one. And I found this on the internet. I came in Saturday and I was doing a lot of research for this. And this was in a discussion. I think it was over, what is it, Wheat and Tares? I can't remember, but it was about this issue when it happened back in December of 2022, was it? No, 2021, I think it was. And there was some argument going on, and people were saying, like Kwaku was saying, and Cardin were saying, oh, well, it's just a joke, man. It's just a joke. Nobody's getting hurt. And that John DeLynn overreacted when he called the police. So here's what Sam Scott says. I don't know who he is, but I want to give him credit for this because I thought this was pretty articulately done. And Rebecca, would you read what Sam Scott said?
Oh, let's see. If I lean really close and everybody looks up my nose.
You got glasses on your head.
What?
You could use the glasses on your head.
Said, responding to someone saying there is no danger of violence from a meme. You don't see the difference between the people who suggest violence to the public and the people who would carry out the violence. No, you do. Just in case you don't, or you think it's funny and not at all serious, perhaps you've forgotten recent events. We do not. We remember the time a guy went to a pizza place, guns loaded, looking for Hillary Clinton, a stolen and children. Yeah, thank you. And stolen children in the non-existent basement. We know that Lenny Posner lives in hiding because somebody told people that his child didn't die in Sandy. Thank you, Sandy Hook. We know it wasn't the person who posted the memes or hosted the program where lies and the conspiracy theories were spun committing the violence, but you know this. You know there's a difference between those who call for violence and those who carry it out. They showed a human being being beaten, and now they are trying to claim that what they really meant is that ideas need to be beaten. Why not smash a book, computer, magazine, or stacks of paper instead of a human being? We can see it's not ideas being beaten, and the accompanying discussions reinforce that. Your dishonesty is disgusting.
So, kudos to you, Sam Scott, wherever you are.
That's right.
Do Latter-day Saint leaders know about Deznat? And do they care? Well, they have to know about it to care. And I'm not sure of either of those, but here's the answer from the person who did the study. I would expect that church leaders know about Deznat. Official, and here it's highlighted. I highlighted this. Official church spokespeople have on at least 2 instances provided a statement to the media. This is why I was looking. Making it clear that the Deznat movement is not affiliated with or endorsed by the church. So where are these statements that have been issued on 2 occasions? I would guess that they care some of the things that Deznat does when it flirts with racist ideas undercut the work the church is doing in that area. And yet, I mentioned boundaries earlier. I don't think the church has set as many of those boundaries as it could, and for understandable reasons. To call into question, for example, Ezra Benson's legacy is to call into question the prophetic mantle that is at the head of Latter-day Saint leadership. I disagree here. I don't think you even have to mention Ezra Taft Benson, and you don't have to mention Brigham Young, and you don't have to mention Spencer Kimball or anybody to come out in general conference and say, Deznat, we have nothing to do with them, and we denounce them, and don't be a member of them. Otherwise, you need to go turn yourself into your stake president, just like you have to do if you vote opposed to any of us. So that's the end of that story. What are your thoughts on that story? We'll go to Bill first and then to Rebecca.
You and I covered Deznat to some length there for a while. It was one big episode, but there were also a few episodes before that and after that where it also came into play. I think anytime you talk in violent terms, you run the risk of inciting people who aren't stable, people who have a lot of anger, people who have nothing to either live for or to do with their time other than to cause trouble. And so
people like Cardin Ellis. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, which, by the way, he did sneak a knife onto an airplane intentionally. So you're not exactly wrong making that joke. There's some truth to that.
Oh, Cardin loves me. It's okay.
Something you and I would never do, by the way. Take a knife on an airplane.
No. Oh my gosh. I could tell you a story, but it's not Mormonism After Dark. But no, I would not. I would go to great lengths to not do that.
Yeah. So my main point is that Deznat maybe seems like they're just a bunch of, childish men sort of being foolish, but the risk is always there that kind of stuff, just like we had this week with the assassination attempt on President Trump, you can point back to certain rhetoric which may be inciting certain human beings to sort of lean that direction more intensely. And so I think we all need to be careful of violent rhetoric in spaces where we're suggesting that harm be done to other human beings.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I think Deznat says the quiet parts out loud. This is not foreign to a lot of people. I was raised as a Benson, Bircher, Skousen, McConkey-ite, and this was there. It was in the air. It was in the water of everybody that kind of went on that trajectory. So these guys are just kind of saying it out loud, everything that existed before. And I do know in groups like this, I do know some people that are, I don't think they're in this exactly, but they're maybe adjacent. They definitely listen to rhetoric from the pulpit that maybe you and I wouldn't consider violent, but they hear things like we're in a war, the war of heaven. We've got to fight. Satan is fighting you. If you start listening in those terms,
musket fire.
That's what I'm saying. That was one of the more overt ones. But even just if you listen to normal things at youth conferences or conferences, it's always, to get everybody fired up, do what's right. We're in a war. You're the chosen generation. It's very dramatic. And I think it's very exciting for some people. You know what I mean? You have a higher purpose, a higher call. There's a bigger picture to your life. And that involves us versus them. It involves fighting for a cause, fighting for the prophet, fighting for the Lord. And some people are very attracted to that.
Flash the sword above the foe.
Yep.
Don't we have that as a lyric in one of our hymns?
Yeah, listen to some of the hymns. Oh my God. Yeah, we should be standing up and marching during most of them. Absolutely.
Something about the youth of Zion.
Yep, not faltering.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so that's the end of that story. Bill, do you have a story for us now?
Excellent. So here we go. This is Elder Duchu and his recent thoughts on how Prop 8 motivated him to change. Good evening. Tonight we delve into a story of controversy, reconciliation, and the intricate dance between faith and civil rights. Our story begins in 2008 with California's Proposition 8, a measure that aimed to ban same-sex marriage. Despite public assurances from LDS church leaders such as Elder Jeffrey R. Holland that the church did not contribute financially,
institutionally, not a single dollar, not one red cent of money from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints went into Proposition 8 or any other comparable proposition that I know of. Now, a lot of Latter-day Saints got involved, and a lot of Latter-day Saints, particularly in California, donated their own time and money to do it. So I'm not being coy. I'm not dodging the fact that there was a terrific involvement on that one. We chose to be a little more vocal, a little more visible. And by we, I just emphasize totally, this is a voluntary lay participation with no money and no formalization institutionally.
A concealed money trail revealed otherwise. Mormon contributions influenced by church encouragement amassed an estimated $22 million, with some funds, at least $190,000, directly coming from the church itself, fueling a high-powered campaign to pass Proposition 8. The campaign left a deep scar on the LGBT community, with many feeling denied, not just of marriage rights, but of equal dignity and citizenship. The anger and anguish were palpable, and the backlash against the LDS Church was fierce. In the years following this contentious period, Elder Alexander Duchu, an attorney involved in negotiations between LGBT and religious groups, emerged as a voice for reconciliation. Now, a General Authority 70 and General Counsel for the LDS Church, Elder Duchu shared his reflections at the 2024 Notre Dame Religious Liberty Summit. His speech, titled Religious Liberty in a Polarized Age, provided a candid look at the lessons learned from the aftermath of Proposition 8. Elder Duchu recounted how, in the wake of Prop 8, church representatives, including his late friend, Bill Evans, church PR official, began quiet, off-the-record meetings with members of the LGBT community in Salt Lake City. These early discussions weren't about changing beliefs or policies. They were about sharing personal stories, building understanding, and fostering mutual respect. Over time, these dialogues paved the way for deeper conversations and eventual legislative action. One significant outcome of these efforts was the 2015 Utah Compromise, a law that balanced LGBT rights and religious protections in employment and housing. Elder Duchu described the passage of this law as dramatic and emotionally charged, yet ultimately a testament to what can be achieved through dialogue and compromise. The jubilation at the signing ceremony, with supporters from both sides hugging and crying, symbolized a new era of mutual respect and cooperation. However, Elder Duchu acknowledged that Utah remains one of the most conservative states in the nation, and while it has become more supportive of basic rights for LGBT persons, tensions and flare-ups still occur. He emphasized that the process of peacemaking is ongoing and requires a continuous effort and understanding. Building on the success of the Utah Compromise, Elder Duchu was involved in drafting the Fairness for All Act in 2019, a complex bill aimed at protecting both LGBT rights and religious freedom. Although the bill did not pass, the negotiations fostered important lessons about listening, understanding, and finding common ground. Despite these efforts, the LDS Church continues to face criticism for its historical and ongoing stance on homosexuality. Critics argue that the church's theology and policies remain deeply homophobic, perpetuating pain and exclusion for LGBT individuals. The church's journey toward accountability and reconciliation is far from over. As Elder Duchu reminded us, quoting Jesus Christ's Sermon on the Mount, quote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God," unquote. His call for peacemaking and understanding in this polarized age serves as a poignant reminder of the need for respect and dialogue, even amidst our deepest divides. Back to you, RFM.
Well, I had absolutely no idea that something like that would be going on behind the scenes with a Mormon attorney who was involved in the Prop 8 from the church's point of view. And yet he seems to have had a road to Damascus moment. What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, how can you not? Honestly, I was just kind of looking at the chat and somebody said, how is it that the church keeps denying these things and their involvement when you can so easily Google what exactly happened? I mean, I'm just shaking my head like crazy when President Holland is saying that it's absolutely ludicrous that the church did not pull out all the stops. And I think a lot of us anecdotally either experienced it ourselves. I have told the story many times of sitting in Relief Society and they come in and say, we've got to go support Prop 8. We're going to charter a bus. We want everybody to sign up. People are threatening the temple in LA. They're picketing the temple. We want you sisters to sign up and go kind of lay or sit in the road to stop cars from getting to the temple. And when you're not doing that, we want you to canvass different neighborhoods. And I look around, I'm kind of laughing until I realize no one else is laughing. They're signing up as excitedly as they can. That was kind of a pivotal moment for me where I realized, wow, I really think very differently from everybody else that I'm sitting here in this meeting with. And of course, I think a lot of us have podcasted about Prop 8. Talk to people names that a lot of you guys would know, other podcasters and other people that are on our podcast who were contacted and asked to donate money. That in that sense, President Holland is correct. The church did not give money, but boy, they made it really easy and told everybody where to donate the money, how to donate the money. And the interesting part is that these calls would come from a person's stake president and who'd been told from higher up, contact these people, have them donate. It was always $10,000. Everybody I talked to was asked to donate $10,000. I myself had a family member called into a very special fireside for high net worth Mormons. I didn't get that call, but my relative did. And again, asked to donate. So this idea that, we just kind of watched it and it organically happened. Absolutely not. And I'm actually, in a way, sort of glad it happened just because it was one of the first times when a spotlight was shown on the incredible power of the church and their ability to meddle where they do not belong at all. And I think they're still living it down.
I will tell you that it was a good thing that I had I was muted intentionally. This was a good mute for RFM because when you were playing that audio from Elder Holland saying, "I'm not being coy," I laughed out loud. And because he's obviously being coy and he's trying to get around it. And actually that $190,000 now, Bill, you're saying that actually came directly from the church in addition to solicited donations from members?
Yeah. So I just want to be sure, because Rebecca, you sort of said, well, maybe the church didn't donate directly, but actually the church did donate directly. There was one instance of $20,000, and then there was another instance where the total between the two made up $190,000. And even one of those, I don't have it handy, but one of the images showed up during that video was Deseret News admitting that the church funded $190,000 worth of Prop 8.
Do you know what that was? That was expenses. I remember this now. It was like this was like in flight, or this was a dinner, or this was a hotel room. So it was sort of expenses adjacent, people that were supporting, but it wasn't directly into the fund, if I remember. But it definitely was expensed for sure.
The other thing the church denied was that it had any official participation in that. And when that flow chart came out showing Elder Ballard at the top, and then I don't know if it's President Packer or maybe his son, who's also a 70 at the time, but they had Packer listed as part of that as well. And then there was one other general authority that I noticed the name of. Anyway, so there's that. And then I did want to share a couple other thoughts if we've got a second.
Well, sure, absolutely.
So two things. One is that Elder Duchu, who seems to be an LGBT ally, he mentioned Bill Evans, who used to be church PR. And Bill had, before he died, he's passed away since, but he became a very big LGBT ally. He joins the board of support group for LGBT Mormons, and he helped towards the end of his life to try to get the church to sort of change course a little bit. And so sort of he's representing, Elder Duchu is representing the church at this conference. And he's acknowledging that essentially the church was wrong on Prop 8 and that he's learned lessons from that Bill Evans, who used to be church PR, has learned lessons from that. Elder Kieran, the newest apostle, has a very liberal leaning in terms of inclusiveness. And Sherinian, we'll get to him here in a little bit. He's got a left, when I say left, I just mean inclusive, sort of away from the conservative orthodoxy of Mormonism. And he's very inclusive, obviously. He's an ally. And so what I'm starting to think is possibly going on, because you're starting to hear it in official channels and see people called into official callings, is the church seems to be making a move to more inclusive, more soft, more kind types of leaders and people called to be voices for the church. That's the first thing I want to just note. And then the other one is, I just want to say, because the name Duchu is interesting, remember, folks, in Mormonism, don't be a douche canoe, be a Duchu. Those two are very different, as you can see by who's represented on the left and the right.
I think that's great. And I hope Jacob Hansen is watching as well. Are you watching, Jacob?
Yeah.
This is for you.
Be a douche-coo, Jacob.
Don't be a douche canoe, Jacob.
What do you guys think about? What do you guys think about liberal leaders suddenly and voices sort of being at the forefront the last decade or so, 2 decades? Sort of people starting to come in that might be policy changers or voices for change in the leadership or behind the scenes.
I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not sure I'm seeing it. I noticed that individual, Nelson, was it? Who was the individual who has passed away earlier, I think this year, that he was talking about Duchu?
Bill Evans. Bill Evans.
Bill Evans. Yeah, it's almost the sense that he can talk about what Bill was doing now that Bill's dead, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what he said, but it was almost like, well, he's dead now, so I can tell you all these horrible things he was doing, outreaching to, affirmation and things like that. We can talk about this now. But honestly, I don't know. I think that it will be with the Mormon Church, as it is everywhere else, that progress is achieved one death at a time.
And they're always 20 years behind, as President Holland himself said. So, which, think about Pride Month, right? And there's all kinds of posts on social media, everybody with their flags and their paraphernalia. And then equally in number are posts that these things are being ripped down and stolen from houses and seen on cameras. And everybody else is displaying their proclamation of the family flag. That is a new thing. So it's definitely sort of an us and them. And as far as people at the top, I mean, this is what happened with Aaron Sherinian. This leads right into this because, could it be that an ally is a spokesman? Well, more conservative Mormons said, absolutely not. This is not happening. You guys have misunderstood. The rest of us are saying exactly what Bill just said. I don't know. It seems like there's a softening of stance. There's more progressive people that are being put out front. So I think all of us see it in a very different way, and we're all kind of looking for signs. I think Aaron Sherinian is one of those signs. I think he is a flashpoint right there.
And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about Aaron Sherinian. Apparently, there's been a sighting. He was seen at a mall with Elvis, I think. But we'll see about what happened there in that story. I just wanted to say a couple of things. First off, I have noted for a long time, and others have as well, that the proclamation to the World on the Family from 1995 is at its heart, it's an anti-gay document. That is what it is. And that's why it was written in the first place. And the only thing that is of significance about it, and not just pablum, is the kernel at the heart of it, which is about identity and about gayness. Okay. So it covers both of those, especially in that thing that says that, what is it? Gender is an essential characteristic or attribute of our premortal, mortal, and postmortal identity, I think is the one key line. That's one of the two key lines in there. And I've noted that. And of course, people who are still very faithful in the church have disagreed with me and said, no, it's not. It's not anti-gay. Okay. I think the argument's over now. If Mormon families are putting up the proclamation on the family to combat, we're having the battle of the flags, right? To combat rainbow flags or gay affirmative flags, right? Then it's pretty obvious that this is an anti-gay document, whether it's in a flag or otherwise. So I think that argument is gone, and I've been proven correct. Just wanted to point that out. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the list that went around in your Relief Society, Rebecca, sign up and drive to LA so you can put your bodies in front of the bulldozers at the temple or whatever it was. Did you go, by the way? You didn't go, did you?
Oh, no. No, there was me and one other woman that my neighbor looked at each other and were like laughing. And then we noticed everyone else was serious. I did not go. I lived in Utah at the time. I had very little kids and I had no motivation to go. I did not want to go. I didn't support what they were doing. And so I just kind of quietly did not sign my name. However, I did not stand up and say anything like I objected or are you all freaking crazy? Like I might do now.
Document. Good day, sir. Good day.
Exactly.
But I just want to point out that this is what happened is that there's all of this stuff going on in California. Prop 8. The church is involved. They're going door to door. Everybody knows the church is involved. And so some people were very upset about it. And they went to the temple and may have tagged it, spray painted it, done some damage. Now that's inappropriate. And I'm not in favor of that. Okay. So, but having said that, it is, and then the church lies about its involvement in Prop 8. Okay. We played the tape. It was last week, Bill, you played it, where Elder Oaks is there. And remember, Elder Christofferson is with him looking horribly awkward and embarrassed. And Elder Oaks jumps on. He's saying, we're not going to give any apologies. We don't ask for apologies. We don't give apologies. And what he gives as the example of the church not asking for apologies on is when people came to the LA temple and they tagged it or they spray painted. We never asked for apologies for that. I just wanted to make sure that I connected the dots and put that in its historical context, that that's what he's claiming to be the victim of, and why it's okay for the church not to give apologies because they didn't ask for apologies when they got caught being involved in the Prop 8 campaign and people didn't take it well. And then they went and spray painted the temple.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca, do you have a story for us? Tell us about Aaron Sherinian.
A couple different stories. I have one more thing to say, though. When I was voting that year, the Prop 8 year, when it was being voted on in California, somebody ahead of me in line, I was, at the polling station, said, where's the Prop 8? Where do I vote? This is how Mormons, and I'm in Utah. This is how Mormons were thinking.
You're not living in California, are you?
No, I'm in Utah. That's what I'm saying. This is how Mormons felt. They thought it was so real, and it was something that they needed to fight and defend and vote for.
This is why this person couldn't find it, because they're in Utah.
Because we're in Utah. It's not on the ballot.
Okay, now I see.
Exactly.
Where's Prop 8? Where do I find Prop 8? I got to vote for Prop 8.
Yeah, well, you don't, because your nose is in another state's business. So you don't.
Okay.
Anyway, that just came to me. That was a funny story. Okay. All right. Bill is going to have to move all my slides. I have a whole bunch. So as you know, if you've watched my podcast, Mormonish, or the newscast, we're always kind of looking for Aaron Sherinian. And if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of give a very quick background. So back in January, the wonderful, by all accounts, wonderful Aaron Sherinian was called to be the chief communication director of the LDS Church. And that means, has the ear of the brethren. If he's anything like the past director of communications. He will be making all the announcements. That was Eric Hawkins, and he did that. He was always quoted in the papers, making the announcements. In fact, when others made announcements and it wasn't Eric, it was not trusted. Like, the director is the one. He's the forward-facing face and voice of the church. So this is what Aaron was called to be. And then very quickly, social media posts, as you can see here on the slide, started to surface. He's an ally. He's very excited about court decisions. He's at a pride parade. And so people are very confused, and we all start podcasting about it, right? Here's some examples. And again, it's the more conservative Mormons saying this cannot be right. This gentleman who's an ally never would have been chosen to have the ear of the first presidency and the quorum of the 12, and certainly not to make announcements representing the church, given his background. The rest of us are like, this is very exciting. This is a step forward. We will wait and see what happens. Well, what happened? Let's go to the next slide. He basically disappeared since January. We have been tracking it, not in a stalker way, but just sort of an interested way, because we felt, like I mentioned before, he's a flashpoint. The second he comes out and makes an announcement, that means the church is utilizing him. The church does want an ally as somebody who's out front making announcements representing the church. But he didn't make any announcements, not at all. We sort of heard that he was working behind the scenes, that he was, taking care of different tasks and jobs, but never forward facing at all. So everybody was just kind of waiting. When is he going to come forward? We sort of made the prediction on Mormonish that he might be slid more into a role to be a lobbyist or perhaps a diplomat, utilizing his background in DC, that he might be used in that capacity. And that is why I feel this is exactly what happened. So last week, headline here, Ukrainian's President Zelensky did not meet with President Nelson or highest LDS leaders. Why not? He's here in Utah. He's at a big dinner or lunch, and he's meeting with some leaders in the church, as the headline says, not the top leaders. And all of us look there, and then we look closer, and then we get out our magnifying glass, because don't we all have one? Or our reading glasses. And there he is. Let's go to the next slide. There is Aaron. He is at the table with Elder Cook. I think Elder Cook was the highest ranking person in the church that attended, and some others. And there he is, sitting there with President Zelensky, and it's on the front page of the Tribune. So 7 months later.
I can't see Elder Cook.
Yeah, I think
Is he right behind that guy's head?
Yes, I think so. But this was noticed. This was noticed by conservative Mormons, and a couple of people put out some videos on this. And this was also noticed by the rest of us, because we've all been kind of watching just to see, because the moment he comes out and speaks and represents the church, to a lot of us, that means the church is, totally okay being represented by somebody who is openly an ally and perhaps a more progressive Mormon. So I don't know. What do you guys think? He's underground, much like a hedgehog, for 7 months. And now here he is. What are your thoughts? Does it mean anything? Are we reading too much into it? I don't know.
Did he do anything to make an announcement about the meeting?
No, there was no announcement. That's the thing. That's why my prediction that he'd be used more in a diplomatic role or as a lobbyist, without ever having to have his name in print saying, says the prophet, says spokesman Aaron Sherinian. We have not seen that yet. So I'm not sure.
I don't know either. Can I ask you, is the guy on this side, the same side of the table as Aaron Sherinian, but the tall guy, is that the bishopric member? Is that Cause A?
I think that could be.
It looks like him, the one who was on 60 Minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to go. We can go through the list in the article. That wasn't what I was focusing on here. But, the main point of the article is, like, why would he not be meeting with President Nelson, And there are a lot of loaded reasons for that, I guess, too. So I don't know. What do you think?
There in the bishopric, the presiding bishopric, and I think purse strings. Yeah. Because I imagine that's what President Zelensky is meeting with a mega
humanitarian aid, and absolutely.
Or is trying to get money.
Yep.
Some kind of aid.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What do you think, Bill? Are we reading too much into it? Here he is, 7 months later. And I do check. I used to keep like a running ticker tape. You know that, where I'm like 125 days without an announcement.
My 2 cents is, first, I sort of think this meeting's a little strange. You have the president of Ukraine, who's in the middle of a war with Russia, who's meeting with the LDS Church as if that somehow solves the problem. And I don't know. Is the church going to throw a bunch of money at Ukraine because the U.S. government, has run out? Or, I'm just trying to figure out what's in the meeting. I will say this: the fact that Sherenian is there tells me he is trusted and he is doing something that is at least mildly important.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that picture of him in the lower right. What a great picture. That man knows how to wear a suit.
Yeah.
Everyone said that on every video I've watched. They're all like, no matter what you think, he is a nicely dressed gentleman.
He is. Mormons
He's
wear
had a
suits
few
all
gay
the
friends
time.
help him.
That's it. No, and I know that President Zelensky was here meeting with Governor Cox too. It was a whole big thing, and he was just kind of making the rounds. But yeah, it's very interesting. So we'll see if he, and like I said, as I kind of discovered, he's definitely manipulating things behind the scenes as far as PR, reacting to stories. I did have some inside information on that, but the people on the ground are making the announcements, not Aaron. So, and maybe that's just the new hierarchy of how they've restructured that department. That's very possible too. But he definitely seems to be right out front, and there's that picture. So to me, that says the church is aware. There he is. And they have to be aware of the significance that all of us put on Aaron. They have to be aware that we all say he's very progressive. He seems like a wonderful person. He's an ally. And if he's speaking for the church, that is an improvement.
I was just going to throw onto the screen here. I think I can't see if I can make that bigger. I don't think is that Elder Cause. I think that's a different guy, but I think this is the guy you're thinking of.
Is it Bishop Waddell?
Waddle.
Yeah, someone in the chat mentioned that. I think that might be right. Waddell or Waddle.
Yeah, that looks like maybe
I get
that's
my presiding bishopric members confused sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something, and Mormon men wear suits all the time. So you think that they would look better wearing them. No. Typically, they sort of hang on them.
Yeah, they don't get them tailored. Only a few do. And when they do, you can really tell the difference.
I mean, that's a great shot.
Yeah.
And I got to say that Zelensky wears a green T-shirt pretty well too.
Yeah.
There he is, meeting with Mormon leadership. He's still got his green T-shirt on.
That's it. It's a fashion update from the Mormon Newscast. What more could you want, right?
Yeah, Zelensky doesn't know that he's sticking it to the man just by wearing his T-shirt to that meeting.
Exactly. But I will say on some of the more conservative podcasts that I watched, they were a little, because from their point of view, what is this person doing out front when he definitely has these points of view that in their mind do not reflect the Church of the Brethren? So.
Well, I don't know, but they put him there and somebody made that decision.
That's what I'm saying. He's a flashpoint. The second he pops out, like a groundhog on February 2nd, it means something. Rain or shine. We'll have to decide. Okay, let's move on to, of course, what else but another temple update. There's always something happening, and things are really coming to a head right now. We will be talking about the McKinney, Texas temple, 43,000 square feet, 173-foot tall spire. This is actually RFM's slide that I've used over and over for like 2 months. So thank you for making this. And
You're very welcome.
Way back, because it has all the facts on it. I can never keep
the or I should say that I've stolen from you.
I can never keep the facts straight. There's so many temples that we're dealing with. And this was announced back in October of 2022. So if you can go forward. Okay. So just to update everybody, when we last left Fairview, and that is the town that the McKinney, Texas temple is being built in. It is not in McKinney. It is in Fairview. And what did the Planning and Zoning Board say to the LDS Church? They said, simply come back with a plan that includes a 42-foot roof height and a 68-foot steeple, which is the same as the largest religious building in Fairview, which happens to be your very own meeting house. And this actually was the town council where they put it on hiatus and said this. So of course we made a meme. One does not simply build something that is almost 3 times taller than the tallest religious building in town.
And completely violating the zoning.
Completely violating all zoning, yes, known to man in that area. So yes, so I should say that this application went to the Planning and Zoning Board. It was voted down. It went to the town council where they said they are going to postpone. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yes.
So what happened next? Well, there was a very special meeting last week, and this was not a public meeting. This was a meeting where some leaders of the church and some leaders of the town council got together behind closed doors, all perfectly legal. And I'm calling this the follow-up meeting. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. And I thought maybe both of you would want to do your little impression because you always do it so well.
Of what? You mean Brando?
It'll make you, you're Bill. That's what I was thinking.
Hey,
Make him an offer he can't refuse.
That is really good because I do
It's
a younger
really
brand. I
good.
do the Stella. I go, Stella. You know what we got here in Louisiana? It's the Napoleonic Code. It means what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours.
That's
not
right.
May he have a masculine child.
I'm
I
doing
literally
Simon
put this
Kowalski.
in, everybody, just because I knew they would do that. So let's just let them run with it for a couple minutes. But it's true. An offer
By the
you
way,
can't
I don't
refuse.
know if it's legal, but it's corrupt as freak.
Yes,
This
it
is
is.
absolutely corrupt.
Yeah,
And I
it
know
is
you always
absolutely
want to
correct.
say it's not illegal and all that stuff.
Yep.
This is corrupt as freak. To have
Nope.
the city council in any kind of an issue, especially one that's so hotly contested, to meet with one side privately without the other side present. No, you don't do that.
Well, it
They
was the
should all
two
be fired
sides. It was
or
the
not,
two
or
sides that were
unelected.
present. It was the church and the town council, and the church
That's not two
requested these
sides.
meetings because the more they can hammer out ahead of time, the easier it is for all
The
those
city
crowds
council
that
is the
have to
one who
take
makes the
buses.
decision.
Yeah.
You don't have. This is why judges are forbidden to have
Exactly.
ex-party contact.
Exactly.
Keep the contact with one
Nope.
party in the case when the
Here.
other party is not included in that.
No, and I will tell
Shame on
you,
you, city
I will
council.
tell you as we go through this that the town council is following the law to the T, and they are sort of being blamed for it as if they will not meet with the church. And that's not at all what's happening. They have certain laws, as you're describing, where they're not allowed to. So, okay, so let's go to the next slide. So I'll let you know what happened in this meeting by reading the church's statement, and then we'll talk about what really happened. So this is a media statement update on the progress of the McKinney, Texas Temple. So this is a statement put out after this meeting that they had to let everyone know what happened. So it says, as we continue to work through the approval process for the McKinney, Texas Temple, again, this is the church, we appreciate the goodwill of those helping to make this sacred place of worship possible. This morning, representatives from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints met with Fairview Town Mayor Henry Lessner, Mayor Pro Tem John Hubbard, the town manager Julie Couch, and town attorney Clark McCoy to discuss the proposed McKinney Temple.
Rebecca, this release is from the church.
Yes.
Okay,
this
it's
is
from the church. Got it.
This is the church's take on the meeting. And then we'll get to what really happened, as I said. So I'm being facetious, of course. Yes, this is what the church put out. During this meeting, the church presented a good faith offer that included reducing the height of the temple by approximately 15 feet.
Which means it was less than 15 feet.
Yes, give or take. It was approximately. So we don't know.
It was
It's
a few inches shy of 15 feet.
Just shy of 15 feet. It's around 15 feet. And changing the name of the temple, because that was sort of a point, not a big point, but Fairview and McKinney, it's kind of like the farmer and the cowboy can't be friends. They kind of have some bad blood over an airport. So at one of the city council meetings, one of the residents got up and said, and why in the world are you building this in Fairview and calling it McKinney? And the church does this all the time. It shares a zip code. But so I think the church thinks this is a big deal. So their two concessions are their good faith offer to reduce the height approximately 15 feet and to change the name. So then the church says, despite these significant concessions, yes, those in attendance said they would not support or recommend this offer to the town council. Furthermore, the town attorney refused to allow church representatives to meet with the other town council members to address their concerns directly.
Good for them. Okay.
And so the church says this.
I take
and
it back
course,
then. What I said
the members go, oh no, they're refusing to meet with us. No, there are sunshine laws in this city. Exactly what RFM said. It's very strict. Who can meet with whom? How many have to be there? What makes up a quorum? Who can meet? Now, the town of Fairview is happy to meet with any representative from the church. They just cannot meet with the church lawyers anymore. And therein lies the problem, because every representative is a lawyer. So it's a little bit of a problem. Anyway,
are you guys, RFM, were you saying that this steeple was several inches shy of its 15th birthday? Is that what?
Yeah, to put a fine point on it, I was saying, if they're saying it's approximately 15 feet, it's less than 15 feet, they're reducing it.
Yeah.
Right. So I said, it's a few inches shy of 15 feet. Yes, exactly. That was the reference. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's always wiggle room. They never say the number right out. And the last part says, we remain hopeful that we can reach a mutual agreement and continue to work towards a solution that benefits both of us. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so of course I made the meme that says, the LDS Church says, fine, we'll take a little off the top. How does 15 feet sound? And the town of Fairview says, nope. And there's a temple in a barber chair. So this temple is 173 feet tall. And Nemo and Landon and my co-host did the math, and that's an 8.6 reduction. And as Nemo pointed out, that's even less than tithing. I mean, the tithing is the minimum that you're supposed to give. They wouldn't even reduce it 10%, 8.6, kind of crazy. And the town, of course, said no, because it has very strict codes that they're wanting the church to follow.
And the thing that cracks me up. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No. You go ahead first.
The thing that cracks me up is they're calling these substantial.
Yes, substantial concessions. And again, they're the applicant. They're the applicant.
Yes.
When does an applicant come in and make concessions? It's just such a funny way to look at things. It sounds entitled in a way.
Yes, it does.
That's my point, is that if the rules are whatever it is, let's just say the rules are 30 feet and you come in at 180 feet practically, and you take 15 feet off, you're still so far from the legal standard that the city has set. And then you go like, I don't get the problem. I don't understand. Like we took 15 feet off, and you're like, well, but you have to get down to 30.
Yeah.
But we're going to change the name too, Bill.
Yeah, and we'll change the name. And what I say is, for my friend,
the name to, by the way, do we know? Was they going to change the name to the? Was it going to call it the Fairview Temple?
No, well, it was Prosper to begin with, but then that sounds a little, I don't know, money grubbing, the Prosper Temple. Fairview, that doesn't fit because they're ruining the view. There is no more Fairview. So I have some predictions that I'm going to do on my podcast about this topic tomorrow night. So anybody can tune in. We can have some fun with it, I think.
Is it possible that what they offered to change the name of the temple?
No, they did not say. They just said
the Duchu Temple. Was
the
it the Duchu Temple?
Memorial Temple. But what I say is to my friend Joel, who lives in Fairview, 160 feet from the temple. He's going to be staring at a brick wall, and it doesn't matter what it's called at all. So changing the name really doesn't do anything. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I know I'm so passionate about this. So the mayor, who was in that meeting,
a lot of work on this.
I have done a lot of work on this. I know. I feel like that years have come off my life on this. Let me see if I printed out the mayor's statement. Okay, I have it. So the mayor has put out a statement. I don't know if they've released this yet or just this will go to media.
The mayor of Fairview?
Yes, the mayor of Fairview, who you saw mentioned as somebody that was in that meeting to begin with. And he says town representatives voiced appreciation for the church's offer, but expressed their view that reducing the steeple from 173 feet to 157 feet did not resolve the concerns, he says it so nicely, regarding height, and that they believed others on the town council would feel the same way. The town's attorney advised the church's lawyer should not meet individually with council members about the application before the public meeting scheduled for August 6th. This is why we're kind of turning up the heat. This meeting's coming up, as it is important that all the requirements of the Texas Open Meeting Act, this is what RFM was trying to say, and the town's process for review of pending zoning applications be followed. Yes. So the church is trying to, I think it's sort of a talking point for members. They won't even talk to us. They've shut us down. Not true. They are following the laws of their own land, of Texas, and of the town, where they cannot meet in the way that the church is trying to get them to meet.
Well, and everywhere else too, just so you know.
Exactly. Everywhere.
This is one of the main things. If a city passes something, and no matter what they pass, especially when it's controversial, there's going to be somebody that they're going to be, goring their ox, right? Yeah. Somebody's going to be mad because it's going to go against them. And you start looking for ways to attack it. Well, the first way is procedurally. Mm-hmm. And if they do not go by the zoning rules and the publication, putting out announcements, having these meetings, allow people to express their concerns, making sure the community has actually their own due process. But if they don't do that, then any decision that's made in contravention of following the correct procedure can be reversed on that basis.
Yep.
Alone.
No, and that's kind of what's happening in Cody, because there was a lot of just questionable things that happened on the planning and zoning board and undue influence. And so the residents were able to launch lawsuits based on that, saying we weren't notified, questionable practices. What you did, City of Cody, was illegal. And so they, of course, are all embroiled in that. So yeah, the town of Fairview is very fair. They absolutely are doing things by the book and up and above board for exactly the reasons that you described, RFM.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
What LDS Church, what would you like to say behind closed doors in private meetings with each member of the city council individually that you don't want to say out in the big room with the crowd? I'm just curious, LDS Church, what might that be?
I feel that if it, again, follows the trajectory of Cody, because remember, Cody and Heber are about a year ahead of all these other temples, it will be that you yourself individually can be sued, which was alluded to the Planning and Zoning Board in Cody. You yourself had better be able to defend why you voted no, because you might be on the hook for this.
Which, by the way, is a big lie.
It is a big lie. But you know what? Everyone in Fairview is a volunteer. They're volunteering their town to make, or their time to make sure their town is running, and they're doing a very ethical, good job. And so, you know, there's something to that. You could be scared and say, I don't want to deal with this, but these guys are really excellent people and they're ready. So, all right.
I see a lot of 2-story smaller temples in the church's future.
Well, they're very concerned about that. And, you know, I mentioned before, I had a recording leaked to me from a meeting with Curtin McConkie. It was from a stake level leader, because this was a stake level meeting. And that's what they said. If we give an inch, if we give a foot, if we give 15 feet, pretty soon we're just looking at, 35-foot temples, and that's not going to be acceptable.
They were willing to give 15 feet though.
Yeah. Well, okay. Ish. Yeah. Ish. We'll see. But as they described in that same meeting, God dwells above us. God dwells on the second floor. That's what we learned from that leaked footage. So interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was the 4th floor, but God knows how to use the elevator.
Yeah. You know what? Nobody really knows.
All we know, he can push your button.
All we know is that our eyes are drawn heavenward. That's all we need to know. Anyway, so the other thing happened,
Rebecca, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just strikes me, these heavy, strong arm tactics the church is using on these towns. This is why I can't find any reference to Deznat on the church website, because the church is Deznat.
Way to tie the two stories together. Yikes. So the other thing going on in McKinney is that there is a new McKinney Temple website that is kind of causing a stir. I would encourage everybody to go check this out. This is what my podcast is about tomorrow night. And we did a wonderful podcast with Nemo yesterday that you can check out. It's McKinneyTexasTemple.org. So if you go to the next slide, we're not going to read these, but letters went out to stakes everywhere, all over the area, from various stake presidents. And it said, here's the new website. You've got to check this out. This will help you understand. It'll give you some talking points, and it'll clear up some misinformation. What's ironic is that the church is not officially putting out this website. Somebody else created it, yet they're endorsing it. So even their own members on some social media sites were like, what is this? They were a little skeptical. It was funny. But yes, the church is endorsing this through all of these letters from stake presidencies to the membership. So let's go to the next slide. There's a lot in this website. And that's why I said I'm doing my own podcast on this later. But the main point of this website, it is a means to correct misinformation in public social media discussions. And I say right there, pat yourself on the back, everybody, because I think that's the newscast. RFM has covered these temples over and over, as have I. I think it's Nemo. I think it's Mormonish. And what they call misinformation, I actually call digging into the facts and presenting things in a transparent way. So tomatoes, maybe. But anyway, so this website, everybody is very excited about getting on here and finding out what's going on. It has things like information about Relupa, questions and answers, the importance of a temple, why it has to be so high, those kinds of things. So it's a really interesting website if you want to check it out.
And they're saying that the opponents of the temple are engaging in misinformation, while these are the same people who are telling their members to start talking out of nowhere about how it's so important, the temple spire. And that's critical to our temple worship.
Yep. And now
the newest information to me.
Exactly. The newest thing, the mass of the walls, because I think they started realizing that even their building to the roof height without the spire is still beyond any town zoning code. So it has to be the mass of the walls, God's on the second floor, and then the spire to draw your eye heavenward and where heaven and earth meet. I've heard this so many times from so many people that I have it memorized. Every time I go through the McDonald's drive-through, I think about it. I look at the arches. My eyes are drawn heavenward.
Yes. Well, God appreciates a good view.
Yes, Bill, did you have a comment? Sorry.
Oh my goodness. I do. I'm getting enraged. I know you're doing this tomorrow night, so I don't want to steal any of your thunder.
No, it's okay. No, that's what I mean. If you just even glance at it,
I went to the fact sheet.
Yeah.
I went to the fact sheet, and I want to just note this right here. Let me make this bigger. Now this is a carefully worded statement. Temple engineers and architects have complied with all of town of Fairview ordinances, including those regarding lighting and land use. In this area, residential home height is limited to 35 feet. Both federal and state laws allow places of worship the ability to be constructed at the heights currently proposed in the application. Now, what they're not saying is what actually is the real way to frame that, which is state and federal laws allow religious institutions to not be limited in the size of their building if they can demonstrate that it is a religious necessity to have the building have that sort of shape, size, dimensions to it. And that's not what they say here. This is meant to lead members to think a certain thing, and it basically says, this is just dishonest and deceptive. And I'm sorry, LDS Church, but you just do this all the time.
No, the whole website is just full of talking points for the members, because I know the members, I feel like they are being used themselves, and their neighbors are coming to them saying, why are you doing this? Why are you building this so high? They really do believe that they're within the law, the legal parameters. They believe there are precedences for this, and it's simply not correct, but they're being misled by all of this. There are protections in this federal law, RLUIPA, that say a town doesn't have to cave like this to something that's so extreme that it's beyond anything anybody's ever done. So there are protections for both sides. So there should be a nice place where everybody can kind of meet in the middle. But yeah, this is extremely misleading. If you go through this site, Bill, I would suggest you don't, because it's full of that kind of stuff. It's just going to make you really, really cranky. And again, the members are reading this, and in good faith, they then are telling their neighbors, and their neighbors are like, no, we've watched the newscast in Mormonish and Nemo. We know. So, everybody means well, I think, but yeah, there's an agenda. Okay, let's go to our next slide. Okay, so this is a picture of the website, and there is right on there, it says this website is not an official website of the church. So again, kind of like back to the Deznat article, right? They're not going to come out and say this is from the church, but they definitely want it out. They definitely want to promote it through church channels. So most people think it is a church website, but they have plausible deniability if there's anything on there that isn't quite right, because it was not put out by the church. So that makes the site even more interesting. Okay, so what's happening next in Fairview? And that is going to be the Fairview, Texas Town Council meeting. This is Tuesday, August 6th. So this is coming up. This is big. This is the white shirts. LDS people are told to show up in white shirts. And of course, the Fairview residents have green shirts that say, keeping it country, a phrase I taught them, obey the laws of the land, based on our article of faith. They've had to rent out a new venue because of how many LDS members that they are expecting to show up at this meeting. And if you go to the next page, this is a sort of a flyer that the residents put out. And I'll just read this one part really quickly, just to give you an idea. The church, of course, is putting out its own information to get members there, to not storm the plaza, but just, be there in bulk, show everybody who you are. So the residents of Fairview say, if you will be in town on August 6th, please plan to attend the town council meeting and please wear green. Fairview will hold the meeting at a certain place. The town must rent the venue at taxpayers' expense to accommodate the thousands, they're not exaggerating, the thousands of LDS members expected to attend the meeting. The town rented the same facility on June 4th. LDS leadership sent emails to multiple stakes and mobilized members from as far away as Round Rock, Texas. It is estimated that 2,000 LDS members descended into Fairview to influence our town leadership and governmental process. The actions by the LDS disenfranchised dozens, if not hundreds, of Fairview residents from their local government. Many residents drove to the location and turned around when they saw the crowd of non-residents. The Fairview residents who did manage to get into the venue did so by showing up 8 hours early. And I can attest to that, having talked to people that did, and waiting in the heat all day. There were several instances of intimidation of Fairview residents. These issues and concerns have been brought to the town council, and a plan is underway to ensure that non-residents don't marginalize Fairview residents on August 6th. We hope to have the updated plan in our next issue. So they're just trying to explain what happened at the last meeting and let people know, hopefully there are some procedures in place so that everybody can be fairly represented. But imagine trying to go to your own town meeting and you can't get in, and you live right there. The temple is within a couple hundred feet of where you are, and you can't get into the building.
No, they're busing them in. And Bill went and go ahead, Bill.
Round Rock, Texas is over 200 miles away from Fairview, Texas. And I'm just curious, because we've said this before, what business is it of any Latter-day Saint who lives outside of whatever the council governs, which I assume is a city council? If the city council is in charge of this decision, no one outside of the city, unless they've been requested or unless they're like legal representation for one side or the other, should be here congesting up a building, forcing them to rent a larger place. It makes no sense to me.
No, it makes no sense, but it's happened in many different venues. We see this over and over. I think some of the flyers from the church say, show us our sheer number of support. So just that sea of white shirts, or as we'll see in a second, the sea of blue shirts in Lone Mountain, they're just trying to make this statement that look at us. And also there is the idea of the Temple District, and the residents there don't quite understand that people from an hour away, that could be their Temple District. We understand that, but they don't. And they're like, why are you guys meddling in our town's business? So, there's a lot of things to misunderstand about Mormon, the structure of how it's all put together. And we kind of try to help people understand, but it's complicated. Okay.
Yeah, Round Rock, Texas. I'm sorry. Yeah, I knew that, Bill, only because Round Rock is a small town. I'm sure it's grown. It's just north of Austin. And Austin is 3 hours away from Dallas. And this is to the north of Dallas. So it's 3 hours on I-35 from Austin to Dallas. I know because I made the trip a number of times to go to the temple when I lived in Austin. It's a long trip, and it's like 200 miles away. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget all the emails, 15,000 emails they were sending to the city manager, or the town manager, and those came from everywhere. I mean, we had a couple missionaries that grabbed it, that were out there and sent it all over the place. So these were coming from, the other side of the country, if not the world, to support an LDS temple.
Do you get the sense the city council, at least in Fairview, is on to the Mormons and their game?
Oh, yes. And I will say this, that they are standing on the shoulders of Cody and Heber, the first two temples to kind of poke their head out and say, hey, what is happening here? Reach out to maybe some post-Mormons and find out, what is this all about? The reason that Fairview, I think, is so ahead of the game is because they had knowledge almost instantly on the shoulders of these other towns, and they paid attention to what was happening before. So, and these people are smart. These are sharp people. I'm not kidding. Nemo visited them, and we talked on Nemo's podcast yesterday how he just has such a love for them, and having met them in person. And I feel this way too, having talked to a lot of these people, quite extensively on the phone. We really care about these people, and we are getting angrier and angrier personally. You try to be impartial when you're podcasting. But then when you know the people and what toll it's taking on them and the sacrifices they're making to try to make things okay in their town, you start getting really angry on a personal level. And that we were all talking about that yesterday with Nemo. That's how we feel. So we love you, Fairview.
The thing that made me
go ahead.
No, please. After you. No,
okay.
After you. I insist.
All right. It seems as though the church intentionally picks areas where the height is only a certain amount, where the temple can stand far above all the other places around so that everyone driving around can see it.
Of course.
And I find it sort of ironic that the church picks areas based on the fact that its height will stand out. Hence, it wants everyone else to follow the rules. It wants every other place to be the 35 feet or less.
Yep.
And it wants to be the exception so that anyone driving through town can see the temple from 2 miles
like
away.
Red Rock. That's the temple right by you. You must know that, Bill, how that temple is just, well, and I will speak to that for 1 second before you speak, RFM. And they definitely pick towns where there are some looser ordinances, as we've heard them saying, meaning that there's a precedence. Maybe another church got a bell tower passed, or something like that. They think that's the case in this town. That's not. But they definitely are shut down. In fact, we believe that's why they didn't build in Prosper, because when they went to the Prosper City Council, the city council said, okay, here's our ordinances. Here it is. And everything was pretty locked down tight. There was nothing they could do legally. So they went to a town where they then said to them, you guys have looser ordinances.
Yes.
So they are able to get in.
Very good. Yeah, just another connection between President Nelson and Yertle the turtle.
Oh, Yertle the turtle.
Yertle, which
Yep.
my dad used to read.
I love that
to
cartoon.
my brother before, Dr.
Yep.
Seuss before bed. If you want to get an image of that, Bill, that'd be great. Everybody would love that. But no, this was the thing that made me the maddest, because it deals with attorneys and I'm going to use a swear word here in a second. So get the kids out of the room. I'll give you a couple minutes to do it, maybe 20 seconds. But when you told me that the attorneys for the church were actually threatening to sue members of the city council individually if they didn't vote the way the church wanted to do, I said, and I'll say it again, that is bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit lawyer shit.
Oh,
and
there
you
we go.
guys should be ashamed of yourself if you're capable of being ashamed of anything.
Yep. And
Because
again,
you
I
are
think it's
giving
just
all
kind of,
lawyers a bad name. Go
it's
ahead.
just kind of alluded to, in Cody, it was definitely alluded to that, there might be some legal ramifications, and Fairview's expressed to us, that they feel that could be the case too. So, I mean, they're definitely going to sue the town. I mean, that happened in Cody, those headlines, church sues small town with 2 lawsuits. These headlines are not good news. And that's why they're getting more and more national and even international attention, which is something we've always hoped would happen. So, and again, I know we have to say it every time, but everybody's more than happy to have an LDS temple in their town. Just build it somewhere if you want it that high where it's zoned for that, or if you want to build it where you want to build it where it complies, or maybe just, fits in. So
just read your freaking articles of faith and follow, honor, and sustain the laws of the land.
Yeah,
All
that's
the
right.
goddamn
That's on
rules.
their t-shirts.
Jeez.
Okay. Oh, did you pull up Yertle?
We
I
need
had
some
Yertle the turtle. Yes,
we need
he
a
was
little
We're on
Yertle right now.
Such a tangent here. It's okay. All right. Next slide. We're
Yertle
getting
the
to the
turtle.
end. Yertle the turtle. Okay. So really quickly, just because Lone Mountain's next event is coming up just on Wednesday, we'll just go into that for like 1 or 2 slides. Lone Mountain, Nevada. It's going to be 215 feet high, 70,000. It is a behemoth. It is massive. This is a gigantic temple in Lone Mountain, a rural preservation area. Like no sidewalks. It's rural. This is just crazy. We've all done podcasts about this. Let's go to the next slide and I'll tell you what's happening there. They did just have a meeting. The city councilwoman, the one that did receive a donation from the church's law firm for $10,000. She's very motivated to make sure everybody sort of senses that there's overwhelming support for it, right? And she's just doing what the people want. That's kind of my take on it. So there was a meeting with the gentleman in the left-hand corner. He is the person in charge of building the temple. So he's a church representative. And yeah, all
the guy in the upper right-hand corner, the dapper guy in the upper right with the nice haircut.
And that is, believe it or not, our residents group, they're hired a lobbyist. No other group we've worked with before has done that. And the lobbyist got up to speed and he's like, wait, what? And so he was invited into the meeting, to try to talk and to try to have a dialogue. Now, the meeting, they did say they invited residents. They didn't invite anybody within 10,000 feet or 1,000 feet of the temple, meaning nobody that was directly impacted. So we have a friend who sort of found herself in the meeting and listened. And it was just really a time to express feelings and thoughts, meaning it's kind of already a done deal, which is unfortunate, but they'll listen. They'll go ahead and listen. But the city councils all received donations. Things have already been rezoned before residents even knew what was happening. So if you go to the next slide, this meeting coming up, it's on Wednesday. It's going to be at 1 p.m., 2 p.m.-ish. All the stakes put out information on how to watch, how to attend. They're telling everybody to be there. As I said, in Lone Mountain, it's blue shirts. I like how they pick colors that probably everybody has. Like you don't have to go out and buy anything, right? They didn't say yellow or fuchsia or something like that. So these guys are all going to show up in their blue shirts, and this is the city council vote. And we, of course, assume and predict that they will all vote in favor of the temple, meaning that it goes against existing zoning and codes, which have been rezoned. And then there probably will be some legal back and forth with the residents group if they can pull that together. But this is coming up on Wednesday, so we'll put some updates on that.
Do you think this is a done deal, Rebecca?
I do.
In Nevada?
In Nevada. I think every other place. So you're saying there's a chance. I do think that, based on some things. But in this case, long before anyone knew this was even coming here, there were contributions being made through the church's law firm. There were things being rezoned. And so I kind of feel that it is. But not forever, because there could be legal process after this. But a done deal as far as voting for it on Wednesday.
Yes. Lesser minds would call it graft.
Yes. Well, I'm not going to use that word, but yes, perhaps. So,
Lesser
okay.
minds.
So that's Long Mountain. And if anybody wants to watch any of these meetings, you simply go to the town's website and they'll have these. It's absolutely fascinating when you feel that you have a stake, or, there are people that you care about or interested in involved. It's riveting. It really is. So, all right.
Is that the end of your update? Is there more?
There's a little bit more, and then there's my final feel-good story. So somebody, a Mormonish viewer, sent this to me today, which I thought was so funny. He lives in Michigan, and 30 years ago, they were building a meeting house, and it's right at the end of a runway, like only half a mile to 3/4 miles away. And so the zones and codes of the city did not allow them to put a steeple on. So they put the steeple, if you can see it, just right there, right on the lawn. There it is. He says it's kind of a joke. People make fun of it, but there it is. And so I'm calling this steeples before the steeple doctrine. They were just kind of steeplets, maybe. And I'm also calling it, would you like that with a side of steeple? Because
the problem is the church is now trying to supersize it.
Exactly. They're trying to supersize it, mega size it with double fries. That's right. But anyway, it's a cute little steeple. So thank you to our viewer who sent that to me today. So
that's an LDS chapel?
Yeah, it's an LDS chapel. Yep. Okay. So very quickly, I thought we should end on a feel-good note. I have finally found a practical use for these gigantic temple spires that lead your eyes heavenward.
What is that, Rebecca?
Huh?
What is that good use you found, Rebecca?
Well, go to the next slide and I will show you. I have found an article that says why teddy bears are parachuting off of historic churches in England. So this is an article about this practice for charity. And I have to say, I had so much fun with AI that I made more slides than I should have because they're just so dang cute. I know. Okay, next slide. There's only like 3 and we'll get
Terrafauna. When you were talking to me on the phone, I thought you were saying terrafauna.
It's a new word.
But it's terrafauna.
I'm going to tell you here. It's amazing. In an effort to raise money to fund the maintenance of an old church in Rayleigh, Essex, England, the church's caretakers will send hundreds of teddy bears parachuting down from its top. The event is part of a growing practice. This is like a trend in the nonprofit world called parafauna. Isn't that interesting? Parafauna. Teddy bear owners temporarily permit stuffed friends to jump from the great heights in order to raise money for hungry families, old buildings, needy children, and more. So
how do they raise money?
What?
How do they raise money?
Because you pay to do this. You pay to have your teddy bear take flight.
Okay, got it.
Exactly. So if you go to the next slide, I had to look this up elsewhere to say maybe this article is just crazy. So the next slide is from Wikipedia. And it says that teddy bear parachuting, sometimes referred to as parafauna, is a game in which teddy bears equipped with parachutes are dropped from a height. It is increasing in popularity as a charity fundraiser, and competitions based on the descent time are also common. So I don't know, maybe you can bet. Maybe it's a wagering scenario. I don't know. A typical teddy bear parachute can be made from an old umbrella canopy, other lightweight material. A simple hemispherical pattern of multiple tapered gores may be sewn from ripstop nylon kite or fabric sail fabric. Many bears are dressed and fully equipped with parachute packs, helmets, and goggles, like the picture that you see.
That's what I immediately thought of to make a parachute.
Yeah, no, these people are
ripstop nylon.
These people are serious about this, and it's a good cause. It raises money. So, of course, all my AI is teddy bears parachuting off of the temple. So it says each teddy bear taking part in the church event is sponsored by individual donors. According to the BBC, most families will lend their teddy bears temporarily while parachutes are handmade by volunteers. The event takes place every couple of years, and it has raised thousands of pounds so far in an effort to keep the 640-year-old church going, says the article. It's a good family event and brings a lot of people to the church, and people bring their much loved teddy bears. Providing Teddy is brave enough to jump. So of course I can see how the kids would love this. And if we go to our last slide, it says the love of God can be shown in many ways. Says Reverend Tom Birch, who preaches at a church that also practices paraphana, a charity in Wylam, England. All people of all ages are encouraged that they can come and join the fun. Teddy bears do jump at their own risk, of course, and occasionally bears get blown farther away than expected, stuck in trees or lost, he went on to say. So it's probably best not to use your favorite bear, right? He said that one year he had a worried father on the doorstep late in the evening asking if we had found his daughter's bear because she couldn't sleep without it. So there is a dark side to it. But I thought, wouldn't that be fun to see? Teddy bears parachuting off of the temple. So I think I have one last slide where I just kind of show that. Yep, there you go. See?
Wow.
See, it's a feel-good story. I'm telling you. Aren't you smiling? I dare you not to smile at the idea of teddy bears parachuting.
I think that's an adorable story. I thank you for sharing it with us. I like to think kind of myself as parafauna.
Really?
Yes. But I'll leave that as it is. A parafauna. Yeah, that's me. Also, Yertle the turtle. For those of you, for the 2 or 3 in the audience who don't know the story of Yertle the turtle, this is not just me saying that, President Nelson looks like a Dr. Seuss turtle character. The whole story is about a turtle named Yertle, by the way, who gets it in his head that he is the king of everything he can see. So he starts in the swamp, and he can't see much except for the swamp and other turtles. So he starts having the other turtles ordering them to get on each other's back. And he gets up a little bit higher and he can see more. Oh, I'm the master of all I can see. And then he gets more and more and more. And he just keeps getting higher and higher because he's infatuated with this idea that he can get higher and higher, see more and more, and everything that he can see is his domain. Until a little turtle, I think, at the bottom named Mac, if memory serves, because it's been like, I don't know, 60 years, burps. And at this point, he's like a mile high, and it upsets all the turtles, and they come crashing down into the swamp. Yertle does at the end of the story. But that's why I'm reminded of Yertle the turtle, because we're talking about President Nelson. It's his administration that's in charge. Buck stops there, and they're going after these spires on the temple, just like Yertle the turtle did with all the turtles that he had stacked up so he could get on top.
Yertle the turtle.
Yertle the turtle. I love it. We're almost becoming a kids show. We're talking about teddy bears and Dr. Seuss.
And parafauna.
And parafauna.
It sounds mildly naughty.
It kind of does a little bit.
Oh, wait a second. What's this, Bill?
Oh, that's right. One last
This
segment.
was one last thing that we wanted to squeeze in. So, of course, no joking, there was an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump this week. But Mormons have picked this up. Rebecca, do you want to say anything about this? You want me to just sort of
Yeah,
go
why don't
through
you
them?
tell us about this one, Rebecca?
Yeah, I don't know.
Here we got a picture. This is the classic image. I'm just describing this for people who aren't watching this, right? They're going to listen to it on audio. Classic image. Got the Secret Service agents around Donald Trump. He's got his fist up in the air, got the blood on the face, the flag in the background, right? It's the one everybody's seen. And then we have Revelation chapter 3, verse 13. And actually, I think you got that wrong, Rebecca. It's 13:3. But maybe I got it wrong. Anyway, and it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So Revelation, pretty sure it's 13:3. It wouldn't be 3. It'd still be in the letters, I think, the 7 letters to the churches. Anyway, yeah, tell us about that, Rebecca. Why did you come up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it on your feed for the first time. So I don't know, but I have since then seen other TikToks about this exact phrase. People saying that perhaps it has some significance, looking for signs.
Really? Well, the reason I did this, I came up with this idea, and it was last night, and I don't know how to make a meme for beans. And so I asked Rebecca if she would help. And Did I send you 313? Did I mistype it or
You know
did
what?
you? I
As
don't
soon as
know.
we're done with the show, because you call me on everything, I'm going to call you on everything. I'm going
Yeah.
back to the text thread. One of us is wrong.
Yeah, because
and
I
we'll
didn't
find
notice
out.
this until right now that the site, but who's going to care? Who looks at this
Yeah,
stuff?
look,
I mean,
somebody in the chat is saying it is chapter 13, and I'm sure you're right. We just have to see what you texted me. So
yes. Well, I
I
don't
don't have my
phone
phone
here.
with me, or I'd be looking it up right now.
You don't usually. You're looking over here when you're texting other people during the show. So you don't have your phone with you.
Well, I left it by accident in the other room, and I've been trying to indicate to other people in the house that I need it. I've been throwing pens against the door and things like
Yes.
that, but no one has come to my aid. So
No?
no, I'm phoneless. The world may have blown up while I've been on the show. I do not know.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's this. And so the whole thing was that you had been sending me these other things where, okay, former President Trump has a very strong evangelical component to his base. And you had sent me some memes from some of those people where they are seeing in this incredibly lucky for Trump, not for the retired firefighter, but that he moves his head just at the last second and the bullet just misses him, right? So they see in that the hand of God and the protection of God and Jesus on Donald Trump, because they're totally in with the Trump camp, God and Jesus. And I just thought, that's funny. I would probably see it more as a remarkably lucky coincidence for Donald Trump, as opposed to divine intervention, because once you start going down that road, you have to ask the question, so God didn't like the firefighter, or going a little further back, God likes Trump, he liked Reagan, God didn't like JFK so much. God really hated Abraham Lincoln. So if you're going to be consistent with that, it kind of leads to absurd results. But what I thought was, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we took that same kind of attitude, because they're also quoting Bible verses in support of Trump, right? I just thought, well, this is a famous passage, especially when it's 13:3, famous passage. And I thought, well, you could just use this passage as well and give it the exact opposite meaning. So this is not so much a political post or meme from my point of view, though I'm sure people could see it that way, as it is sort of making fun of the evangelicals who are making the opposite kind of posts in favor of Trump, invoking divine intervention on his behalf and quoting other scriptures from the Bible in support of that.
And I did get my phone, and you were correct. I'm wrong. I concede. I reversed the numbers.
Oh my God. And I put it up on my TikTok page.
I know
too.
you have to take that down. They're going to come after you.
Yeah, that's okay. That'll be an extra layer. Okay, that was intentional now. That's an extra layer of complexity to this.
And then there's this one, which suggests that there's some spiritual assistance, an angelic minister. Maybe that's Moroni. Is this a Christian one or is this a Mormon one?
I think this might have been. I've seen it. I mean, sometimes they start out in the Christian arena and then they move. I've seen it both places. I think just the idea that he's protected and somebody stopped the bullet.
Yeah, and then of course here's a Mormon one.
This one I like.
Yeah,
I think this is funny.
Completely Mormon. Yeah.
How great would that? This is clever. Putting Trump up there in the position of Samuel the Lamanite, and those freaking Nephites can't hit him with their bows and arrows for beans.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So apparently President Trump is a Lamanite. You heard it here first. That's the story. Any other comments? We're all done. We're all talked out. We're all storied out. Rebecca, Bill?
The Abe Lincoln thing makes sense because there's a new movie coming out that says Abe Lincoln was gay.
Yep.
And of course, we all know how God feels about that. So
there's a new movie,
a documentary or something coming out where they're going to prove that Abe Lincoln, and in the document, by the way, historical documents on more than one occasion show that Abraham Lincoln slept in the same bed with a man when his wife was out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
if you and I were sleeping in the same bed, RFM, I think rumors would get started, and I think it'd be very reasonable for them to begin.
Yeah, you're just collaborating. That's all. A lot of work to do.
Well, if I were married to Mary Todd, I'd probably turn gay too. That's a horrible thing to say. I'm sorry, Mary. Too soon. I know. Well, that's about all for tonight. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hey, why don't you hit like on the show? Would you do that for me, for Bill? I know you'll do it for Rebecca. Just hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. We also have, I understand, a Facebook page for the Mormon Newscast that really Rebecca's has to get the credit for that as well, don't you?
I think Bill set it up. But you know what? I also
You
think
set it up,
before we
Bill?
go, yeah, he
She
did.
posts most of the stuff.
Before
Okay,
we
so Bill
go,
said-
yeah.
I'm the
And
one who
also,
has nothing to do with it.
Bill and I post a lot. You're the only one that's out of the
I
loop.
don't post
But
a lot.
before we go, I wish that you were to announce your topic for Wednesday on Mormonism Live, because it is fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, Mormonism Live, where we're going to have count them, three incredible scholars about things Mormon. We're going to have Cheryl Bruno on the show. We're going to have Don Bradley on the show, who's going to compromise his standards. And he's not going to be on psychword radio this week. He'll lower his standards to come on Mormonism Live and talk about a paper that he wrote with the third scholar, Chris Smith, who's going to be on the show. It just came out in a recent collection of papers that were assembled in a book. Cheryl Bruno is the editor, and she's over the moon about this. It's called Dating Fanny Alger, and it has to do with some incredible research that Don and Chris have done, finally pinpointing, at least to a couple of months, and an important couple of months, as to when it was that apparently Joseph and Fanny got married. And well, there's a few other things. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to say anymore, except it's actually, I'm going to give it all away right now. But there they are in the malt shop. You know, they're just dating. It's very innocent at this point. They're going to the barn after the malt shop is what it is. So it's going to be incredible. It's new research. Please be here if you possibly can. And we're really looking forward to having Cheryl Bruno, Don Bradley, and Chris Smith on the show to tell us about their new research. There we go. Thank you, Rebecca. And Rebecca, you've already mentioned you're going to be doing something tomorrow about temples on Mormonish.
Yeah.
You know,
we'll be going through that website that was making Bill so cranky. And we're going to tell everybody up front, turn your volume down, because now we're starting to get more cranky. And so
what time will that be?
6 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah. And we're just going to go through, especially the Q&A. There are about 10 questions that, you know, are kind of like leading the witness type question. Exactly. So if anyone wants to take a glance at that ahead of time. And we also, as I said, we're on Nemo yesterday. You could watch that too. Really good information here. And just kind of, and the thing is, we focus on maybe McKinney, Texas Temple, but it really represents the behavior in all of these towns with all of these temples and all the towns to come. So it really is the playbook. Yeah.
By the way, I also want to ask you this. I know we've got to go. It's the saddest time. I'm so glad we had this time together. Just have a laugh or sing a song. But Rebecca, do you have up yet the website that Mosiah is helping you with to have basically a resource for all these cities that have the Mormons marching in and wanting to build temples that violate their laws?
Yep. No, he was incredible and reached out, and it's in the works. We've had a couple meetings on it. We have kind of a preliminary plan. He's doing incredible work. I got a little sidetracked a week or so ago by some family things that happened, but now we're back on it. And we have a lot of residents in these towns that are all giving input. And it is a site, a very professional site, where any town or city or area where a temple is coming to, and they say, what does this mean? We're hoping that then they can Google it and find this and just have some resources to kind of explain what that means. Maybe it's not a problem in their town. Maybe all the zoning codes are being followed and it's just fine. But maybe there are some things that they might want to be aware of. So yeah, Mosiah, amazing. He's doing incredible work.
Yeah, I think it's great how we can bring people together who have these abilities.
Exactly.
And accomplish something really worthwhile. Mosiah, there he is.
Yep,
it's coming together, he says.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Thank you,
Boy.
Mosiah. Let's hear it, everybody in the live chat for Mosiah.
If anyone needs a website, call Mosiah.
Okay, I hope he's up for that. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for watching, everybody. I already mentioned about the like and about the subscribe and about the comments. And please join us next Monday for the next Mormon Newscast. Good night, everybody.